multiplies. When you are making bread, what happens? You put in the yeast, then the yeast, and when you put in the sugar, then what does it do? It bubbles up and grows and the bread becomes big. That's how it's made. Now, did you know that that's the same procedure of wine? Did you know that that's the same procedure of wine? That's what it does.
What a beautiful journey we had, and it was very, very educative. It was something that we have learned things that will improve our daily livelihood concerning our health as we are living. How to eat well is very, very important that we eat healthy. Counseling was also conducted of 10 boys who were affected by excessive smoking and drinking.
That your parents work for it. What you do is just to get that smoking. Now imagine. But maybe it took your parents to work for it for 10 years to have it. Now that's a challenge. That's not a good thing. So now imagine that thing that brings you. So it can even make you sell your best trousers very cheap just to get it. Now I know you're so full of but it's a body for that. So things that we've learned to do: number 1, water; number 2, exercise; number 3, avoid going to those places. Or many places sometimes even before night. Once I put a voice, the body also starts inciting people. Really, guys, I mean, that's exactly what happens.
And on the last day, when the testing and counseling was done at the Olympic Stadium, they tested BP, fat, weight, and glucose. And for these reasons, we invite you to come and join us and see exactly what happens.
Why there are so many people who are sick and they don't know what. Remember, as Lenny was saying, accepting the cause when somebody is sick, is it? That's what we say, accepting the cause. Okay, cut off the cause. That's very important. So we're looking at the next one that says sick without a cause. So it's a very important lesson that I would love us to understand, to know what it's like. Okay, fine. So now we take you to Proverbs chapter 23, verses 29. Proverbs 23, verses 29. It says, "Who hath war, who hath sorrow? Who hath war, who hath sorrow? Who hath contention? Who hath bubbling? Who hath wounds without a cause? Who hath redness of eyes?" What does that mean to you? When the Bible says who hath war, what does it mean? Who has war? Like W-O-E, what does that mean? Sorrow? People, you don't know what sorrow is. Yes, so who has sorrow? What is to be sorrowful?
Going through pain.
Going through pain, right? So it's talking about, it's saying, who's going through pain? Who has contention? What is contention? Contention. Strive, yeah. Uneasy with everything, right? Okay, who has bubbling? What is bubbling?
Talking too much.
Bubbling, complaining, isn't it? Okay? Who has wounds without a cause? That's what it says from Proverbs chapter 23, verses 29. So we have to understand what it means. So there's a statement says, so who are these kind of people? So it says, they that tarry long at the wine. You understand that? He says, those who drink too much what? Wine. When it is red. So when it's red, it means it's what? It's very fermented, right? Okay? They that go to seek mixed wine. Okay? Some examples of mixed wine that you know. Do some people know vinegar? Vinegar is highly concentrated alcohol. That's why you see people give it into drops down. That should not be taken by Christians. You cannot take that as a Christian. There's a step 1 says, look not upon the wine when it is red, or when it giveth its color into the cup, when it moveth itself aright. So he says, do not even set your eyes on wine or on alcohol when it's looking red, okay? When it's turning into its color, okay, when it's in the cup, when it's shaking in the cup. So he's saying, do not desire it. That's what it means. Okay? This means do not desire it, okay? Seek yet no. It says, seek yet you know not. It says, seek yet you know not. Yes, seek but you don't know. That's what it's talking about here. Okay? This is 32. It says, At the last it biteth like a serpent. Now it's talking about apple. Okay? As you seek to eat, you drink it, it biteth like a serpent, and stingeth like an adder. You know what an adder is, right? Mm-hmm. Like a snake. So you feel like somebody got bitten by a snake. The Spirit says, thine eye shall behold strange what? Women. And thine heart shall utter perverse what? Things. That's how the person who's drunk does, isn't it? He sees strange women to be beautiful. Goes in a bar, every woman is beautiful. Okay? They even speak things that they say, I didn't know what I was speaking. That's what he's talking about. Okay? So now, we want to understand what it means when we talk about such a lifestyle. So from Proverbs chapter 20, verse 1, it says, wine is a mocker. Strong drink is raging. Proverbs 20, verse 1. Wine is a what? Mocker. Okay, so to tell you it's nice, I enjoy it, but later you find yourself into trouble. It is mocking you. Okay, strong drink is raging. Whosoever is deceived thereby is not what? Wise. Whoever gives himself to anything strong like alcohol is not wise. That's very important for us to understand. Now, this is evidence from, listen, it says, evidence of the first wine industry along the banks of Nile, 3000 BC. So where did alcohol begin from? Egypt. Okay? Egypt at the banks of Nile. When did they start? This is a wine industry. 3000 BC. It came out in Time magazine for that came out page 44 in July 16. That's when it came out. Okay? Evidence of early bread and wine making industry in the cities of Egypt, 3000 BC. So when did they start? Now listen. Bread making and what? Wine industry, they began at the same time. Do you understand that? In Egypt, making a certain type of bread and wine industry, they began at the same time in Egypt. Now listen, how is wine made? Somebody knows how wine is made? Listen how wine is made. Yeast multiply as single cells that divide by budding, okay, or Saccharomyces, or direct diffusion. So it means when the yeast starts growing, then it goes into certain small tiny things, it multiplies. That's how wine is made. Okay? They may grow as simple irregular filaments, okay? Just like the way the sexual reproduction cells, they look so many when you look at them in the microscope. He's saying that's how yeast looks like. Okay? Most yeast will look like that when it contains up to 8 haploids. Now, it means it can a single cell, it can multiply itself into about 8 haploids. Okay, so these things may fuse with anything that has a cell, multiply through the certain division, or as with certain yeast fuse with other aspects. So they're talking about how yeast multiplies. When you are making bread, what happens? You put in the yeast, then the yeast. When you put in the sugar, then what does it do? It bubbles up and grows and the bread becomes big. That's how it's made. Now, did you know that that's the same procedure of wine? Did you know that that's the same procedure of wine? Mm-hmm. That's what it does. So how is this made? That's what I want us to understand. That. Okay? The yeast function, now listen. What is the work of yeast in baking? Somebody knows? Why do we use yeast in baking? To raise the dough, right? Okay? So, now listen. The yeast function in baking is to ferment sugar present in the flour. That's its job. To ferment sugar present where? In the flour or added to the dough. So when it ferments, what does it do? Listen, the fermentation gives off what? Carbon dioxide and ethanol. So what does fermentation do? So when yeast goes into bread, when you're making bread, what happens? As the yeast goes into the dough, okay, it ferments the sugars. So when it ferments the sugars, what happens? It produces carbon dioxide and ethanol. What is ethanol? Alcohol. That's how it works. So the carbon dioxide is trapped within the tiny bubbles, okay? So those bubbles that it makes. Okay, so the carbon dioxide is trapped within the tiny bubbles and results in a dough expanding or rising. That's how it grows faster. When the yeast packs the sugars, that is found in the dough. So sugar is found in everywhere. In flour there is sugar. Okay? In anything that we call grain, That's sugar. So the combination of wild yeast, now listen to this. A combination of wild yeast, often Candida melari, that's what they call it, and an acid-generating bacteria called lactobacillus, okay? It strengthens the gluten and ferments the maltose. That's how it grows. This is a book written about yeast in 1988. So how is wine made? Now listen, the fermentation of wine is initiated by naturally occurring yeast present in the vineyard. Many wineries still use nature strains. However, many use modern methods of strain maintenance and isolation. So the bubbles in the sprinkled wine, so those bubbles that you see like it's fermented, right? So sometimes when you tell that, it's the same way how the yeast works in human beings. So when it mixes with the sugar inside you, the bubbles sparkling in the wine attract carbon dioxide. The result of yeast fermentation, fermenting sugars in the grape juice. That's what happens. The same way it happens in grape, it happens also in wine. So one yeast cell can ferment approximately its own weight. One yeast cell can cause fermentation to its own weight. Okay? Its own weight of glucose, its own weight of glucose per hour. So that's why the more longer it stays, the more it grows bigger. It's bread you're making. That's what happens. So under optimal condition, it works like that. It can produce up to 18% by volume of ethanol. So it can make 15 to 16% being normal. So it can make one yeast cell can make alcohol as much as 15 to 16% of alcohol. One yeast cell. That's how much it can make. So what are yeasts? What is yeast? So I thought to say, people put yeast into flour and water to make bread. The yeast grows into the bread and it makes the bread rise. A substance which makes bread rise before baking. Something that people include in bread to make it rise while it bakes. That is what yeast is, okay? So when you go to the dictionary in Canada, it says, a commercial preparation used in brewing, baking, and a source of vitamin and proteins. They are saying yeast is what they use in what? In the brewing. Okay? When they are making alcohol, they use yeast. Small single cells. What is yeast? Now listen. Small single cells called what? Fungus. Anyone knows what fungus is? Mushroom. You understand that? So it's the same. Yeast and fungi, they're in the family of fungus. They're in the family of mushroom. They're in the family of rotting or fermenting. That's what they are. So a small single cell called fungus and ferments sugars and other carbohydrates and produced by budding, the way it grows. The yellowish frost that forms on the surface of a fermenting liquid, such as beer. When they are making beer, then it's very strong fermented. You know that yellow thing it looks like? That is yeast. That is fermentation. That's fermentation. So they're saying the yellowish froth that forms on the surface of a fermented liquid, such as beer, contains yeast cells and carbon dioxide and promoters fermentation. There or something that causes ferment somebody or something that causes ferment activity or unrest. So anything that causes fermentation is called yeast. The end product of fermentation. So when it ferments, what is the end product? Here they are saying glycolysis is a sequence of reaction that converts glucose into pyruvate with the commitment of production of relatively small amount of at room temperature. So glycolysis can be carried out anaerobically. That's what carbon dioxide does, right? Anaerobically, okay? In the absence of oxygen, so it grows bigger when there is no oxygen. That's what it does. And it's thus an especially important pathway for organisms that can ferment sugar. So, like, cancer cells, Cancer cells, where there is oxygen, they don't grow. Where there is no oxygen, that's where they grow. So that's what this also does. It's the same way. That's why if you give somebody who's got cancer, you're giving them yeast, you're just forcing the cancer. You give them yeast, you're just forcing the cancer. So glycolysis is a pathway utilized by yeast to produce alcohol found in beer. That's what they're talking about. This was found in the Indiana Institute for Molecular or Cellular Biology. They found this fermentation pathway from glucose to alcohol. So it is when they are doing fermentation, they use glucose, which is any sugar. So any sugar can be flour, it can be maize, So glucose plus yeast, what comes out, the end product is carbon dioxide and alcohol. That's how it goes. Did you get me? Yeah? Glucose plus yeast equals carbon dioxide. That's the one that now makes it to grow, the bubbles. Then what else? Fermentation or alcohol. That's how yeast behaves. Okay, so what is alcohol? A colorless liquid produced by the fermentation of sugars or starch. That's what alcohol is. That is the intoxicating agent in fermented drinks and is used as a solvent, also called ethanol, also called ethyl alcohol. Now this is more in roll-ons in perfume, you find this ethyl alcohol. Okay, intoxicating drinks containing alcohol, they are made. Any organic compounds containing one or more hydroxy groups bond to carbon atoms. Some when we are reading the ingredients in a certain drink, says hydroxyl groups, just know that this one has got alcohol. Okay? From Proverbs 20 verses 1, it says wine is a mocker. Strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived is thereby not wise. That's what it says in the Bible. Yeast extract, okay? A thick, sticky brown food obtained from yeast and eaten as spread or used in cooking. So it's the one we use, as they use yeast for baking, for cooking also, many people do that. So people, they don't know what it's called because this is alcohol. Although yeast and fungi wreak most of the havoc in the body, the area of bacteria stages can produce considerable effects on themselves by means of their waste toxins. So that bacteria, when yeast is in you, they are saying it can produce a lot of what? Waste exotoxins and chemical contents and the toxins. Okay? So that's what yeast can do. It can make toxins in you. It can make alcohol and make toxins and spread cancer in you. Those are some of the things that we have found. So many symptoms of yeast fungus infection that you find that may happen when people are taking fermented things. How do you know that you've got a yeast infection? One of the names given to the yeast infection is what they call candidiasis, right? You've heard of candidiasis or candida yeast? So what are some of the, how do you know that you've got a yeast infection? Number one, you have so many allergies, things coming out, itching on your body. Then you also become environmental hypersensitivity. What does that mean? Environmental hypersensitivity.
Many things in the environment start irritating you.
Yes, that means you've got a yeast infection. Did you get that? So it's like the environment when it's polluted, it feeds the yeast in you to multiply when you have reactions. So when it feeds the yeast in you through breathing, what happens? The yeast produces more alcohol and you're ever itching, you have allergies. So you become sensitive. Sometimes with women, the hormones just go off track. Are you getting that? The other one is neurological imbalance. Somebody becomes easily upset. Somebody changes moods. You're not stable. You're upset. You're moody. Yeast can do that to people. Children are very susceptible, so children easily react to yeast. And sugar metabolism is a challenge, it produces more alcohol. Okay? Then others will have a challenge in metabolizing sugars. Okay? Then others they will have weight problem. To gain weight, it's a challenge. The yeast produces more alcohol, more acidity, your nutrients are destroyed, so you can't even gain weight when you're having a yeast infection. Various troublesome symptoms, you have certain symptoms that you don't even understand. So the many symptoms of a yeast fungus infection that can come, okay, that you find in something called In Sick and Tired by Robert Young, who wrote a book about it also, you can find in such a book. So yeast infection, okay, we have been told what's the yeast infection? An overgrowth of fungus in the vagina. So it can be in the vagina of women. In the intestines, it can be in the skin, it can be in the mouth, it can be causing irritation and swelling, a growth that is swelling, or technical name called candidiasis. That's what yeast infection is. So it's a common thing that is. So what are some of the symptoms of yeast? So when you go to a certain book now, listen what it says. The signs to look for a candida condition, in addition to the craving, to the cravings, may include a number of the following. Include emotional stress causing you to feel irritable, you become upset, you don't want to be talked to, that is a yeast infection. You become moody, getting upset, everything, and you also have a poor memory. Your memory you can't remember easily, and you also become vague. What is to be vague? Really?
To be like sloppy, you can't really concentrate.
Yes.
You just want to.
Yes. You're not there, like off-minded. Okay? Absent-minded. That is vague. Okay? Lack of concentration. Also, ringing in the ears is also a symptom of yeast. Okay? Dizzy spots before the eyes. Look at that. Then, on your eyes, it means you are drunk. That's what it means. That's why people who are drunk, they can easily just fall. Yeast does that. So the physical side can be associated with abdominal bloating. People who are bloating too much when they've got a lot of alcohol here. Also yeast infection, okay? Tummy aches, sometimes having excruciating pain in the tummy. Belly aches, diarrhea, constipation, okay? Gas reflux, wind and bad breath, tiredness, fatigue, all those are symptoms, okay? Fatigue, okay? Headaches, migraines, muscular stiffness, you feel like your muscles are just stiff. And in some people may manifest itself as an external fungal infection such as tinea, jaw crash, thrush, vascular white coated tongue. So all those are symptoms of what? Yeast infection. So there are so many. So when you talk about this, there's so many symptoms. Candida albicans is a naturally occurring yeast that flourishes in moist areas. So the Candida albicans is a natural occurring yeast that flourishes in moist area. So there is a type of yeast which you find when you are living a dampy place in a home, there will be yeast. That's why you see fungus. That's what it is. Now imagine that happening in your body. That's what happens. That's how come, believe me, you. I stopped eating yeast years ago. I know what it is. If you go to some of the prayers that were put by Henry Wilson from the General Conference, or things that we prayed for, yeast was one of them. That Adventists should avoid yeast. So Candida albicans is a naturally occurring yeast that flourishes in moist area, such as digestive tract. So where it is damp or where it is watery, it can grow in your intestinal tract and grow from it. Okay? Digestive tract, the vagina, the skin folds. When you have new babies, do you know that they have fungal in the hand? Especially if you're not washing them, no. That's what happens also to babies. They can have thrush of yeast in the mouth. You've seen that? So this type of albicans can develop where it's wetty inside your intestinal tract, in your palms, in the vagina, where there are wet spaces where there's dampness and wet. This can develop. Okay. So ordinarily, its population is kept in check by bacteria that lives in some areas. So it can be in certain areas. When no bacteria are disturbed by antibiotics, now listen, when no bacteria are disturbed by antibiotics, however, yeast population can grow to abnormally high level. So you've got the normal bacteria, that even controls fermentation, but when you have the yeast, it can increase to abnormally high level. For women, the most common form of excess candida is vaginal yeast infection, marked by itching, redness, burning on urination, and the yeast odor, a smell of alcohol in women. Okay, that is the yeast infection that they will have in their private part. It's common. So candida can also be overpopulated in the mouth as thrush, in the warm, moist environment under the diaper, or the diaper rash, and other areas wherever there is moist too much. It can also be there. Those are yeast. Okay, systematic candidiasis. There's also what they call systematic candidiasis. So the medical name for this rare and direct condition is systematic candidiasis. Besides this official meaning, systematic candidiasis has another meaning that was coined in the world of alternative medicine as used there. It is a loose term containing a whole syndrome of symptoms proposed or related to candida overgrowth. And equivalent terms are chronic candida, the yeast syndrome, the yeast hypersensitivity syndrome, or just plain candida for short. Okay, so they're saying this yeast thing is something that when they say someone has got systematic candidiasis, it means you've got chronic candida infection. That has taken longer, is a challenge for you to deal with. So effect of yeast on humans. Okay? So what happens to human beings if we are having a yeast infection?